Hans was the salesman and his brother-in-law funded the operation. They started out sourcing cases from London and movements from the Swiss. They assembled the watches and sold them to jewelers who then put their own name brands on the watches. It wasn't until years later they started assembling watches under Rolex. In 1919, a year after World War I, while England was recovering from the war, Hans moved Rolex to Switzerland to avoid the heavy taxation. At the same time, he dissed his brother-in-law because he didn't need his money anymore because now he was very wealthy. Mind you, it was the war that made him wealthy because every soldier needed a watch and Rolex had the contract for England. The crown on a Rolex is a symbol for the crown of England. You gotta love it. So after sucking England dry, he took off to Switzerland. At the time, the design for watches was weak and they were prone to getting dust and moisture into the movements. Hans noticed a case maker has solved this issue and he started using his cases, and now Rolex became the first to produce a waterproof watch. He advertised the oyster watches by submerging them in a fish tank that was displayed at the shop's window. And then you have the British swimmer, Mercedes, who wore the watch on her neck while doing a 10-hour swim, and after that Hans advertised the watch on a daily paper every day for a month covering every section. This was the first step for Rolex advertisement that led the brand to what we know today. In 1944, when his wife died, he started a foundation which he left all his Rolex shares to. Rolex is registered as a foundation, a charity, so he doesn't pay any corporate taxes. That's twice he was able to avoid taxation. First was from England and now from Switzerland. When it comes to business, this guy is a genius. 2 years after becoming a charity, in 1946, he started Tudor to tap the lower market, reaching those who couldn't afford the luxury Rolex. And with Tudor, other than the recent in-house movement, he used the same steps as he did when he started Rolex, which was to source out the movements. So now we know that Rolex is not a business, it's a charity. That means Rolex does not sell watches. You simply select the amount you would like to donate, and each certain amount comes with a gratitude token which happens to come in a form of a watch that you've selected. That's a fact. One can't truly be upset with Rolex because of their pricing, because with Rolex, you're buying exactly what they're selling. A well-known status symbol. Now let me tell you a story about this Daytona that changed the game. This Daytona was released back in 2015 in China by some group of criminals that were dominating the rep game. They were producing the best in the market, the only watch that was replicated by other criminals. So imagine how popular a fufu must be to have its own counterfeit. And the watch I'm talking about is this one. This is the very first release in 2015. A similar version has been compared to a genuine in this video, which kind of brought a spotlight to these high ends. Everyone who saw this video was looking for it. The one in this video is the fourth and final version. The guy in the video mentioned that it was $1,000, assuming that that's what he paid for, but I doubt it. At the time, they were only going for about $400, unless you didn't know where to get them and you got them from one of those third parties. It came with a working chrono and the movement took genuine parts. Something that's unheard of at the time. So all of a sudden, websites started rising up on Google claiming that they're selling a Swiss-made Daytona for $1,600 to $2,000. When the buyer sees or hears $1,600, he gets sold into the price because he thinks the higher the price, the higher the quality would be. So fast forward, it's 2017 and now everyone knows about these Daytonas, which means scammers know about it too. A YouTuber got caught selling this fufu Daytona to some poor guy for like 22 grand, but luckily the guy noticed that the dial was off when he compared it to a genuine. Also, I want to mention that the only ones that are spotted are the ones that come directly from China with Chinese parts. These Daytonas are like built a kit. The more money you spend, the more genuine it's gonna look like. They put a genuine dial on there, genuine hand, genuine bezel, genuine crystal. And no one is gonna tell you it's fake because it's using genuine parts. The only thing about those parts is they're expensive, but if you have access to those parts, now you're playing a dangerous game. So back to the YouTuber, this guy was known to making the best quality videos with super macro shots telling you and me how to spot a replica Rolex. We're talking about a true hypocrite. So when he got caught, the YouTuber deleted his popular account, and in the same week, a girl who's related to him somehow because she dresses like him and has the same accent became very popular in the same week and makes the exact same content with the same quality. Basically just picked up where the guy left off. So back to the scammers, they started buying these fufus, and mind you, if you lived in China or bought a large quantity, it was much cheaper, talking around $300 or lower. This was acquired for $375, and at the time it was considered expensive for a fufu, so to see that most are spending as low as $800 to $2,000 is just shocking to me. You're paying a middleman who's buying from a middleman that's selling to a middleman. Anyway, they will post it on eBay for over the retail price, and they would sell like McDonald's sells burgers. The customer that's buying from eBay doesn't know what to look for unless they suspect something. No one is going to open the back of their $20,000 watch. It's only when they send it for service is when they find out that it's a fufu. Also, this is why you see eBay's guarantee in the second photo of every watch listing. They had to do something about their customers who are getting scammed on a daily basis. Also, quick note, not to mention those resellers that not only sell watches, but they also offer a lifetime free service. So you will never know that your watch is fake because every time you need service, you just send it to the guy that sold it to you and life goes on. But the thing about the movement is that it's quiet and smooth, everything like the Gen, but what's crazy is that it's just as accurate. It's this reason why someone who doesn't know what to look for and expects the watch to tick and not to be as smooth and accurate that falls victim. What's actually insane is that Rolex waitlist has driven people who are ready to spend over $10,000 on a watch to building their own watches. They would spend 5 to 7 grand on a genuine part and put it on this fufu, which to me is just absurd. Why buy a dial for 5 grand to put it into a fufu and spend 2 grand for the hands and crystal? Well, it's because they want the Daytona so bad and can't have it. They have the funds, but the waitlist doesn't allow them to have one. Rolex is using this waitlist to protect the brand and to keep the demand high, but it doesn't seem like it's working. The majority of customers who are attracted to Rolex right now, they're not in it for the brand, they're in it to make money. It's an investment. Right now, the only shine on Rolex is the ability to resell for a higher price. But if the prices are going up because of the high demand, what about that one guy who's not looking for a Rolex to sell, but he's actually wanting to wear and enjoy it? This guy is now buying these replicas because on the wrist, no one will spot the difference, and he doesn't care because he knows he can afford the real thing. For the 31 line movements, this was done much cheaper because the parts for the 31 line are easily accessible. The 31 comes in every Rolex pretty much. If it's not a Daytona, it has a 31 line. When Rolex upgraded the movement to the 32 line, they changed all the parts and added 14 different patents. Whoa! Now, it's not so easy to source parts for the 32 line, and if you do, you'll find it to be quite expensive. Even at the higher price, you'll still find people still putting them on these fufus. These replicas are damaging Rolex brand in ways that you can't even imagine. Imagine you spent over 10K on a watch that you've always wanted, only to be asked by random people if it's a fake because all they know is that Rolex means fake, fake Rolex, fake Rolex. Or if you weren't lucky to acquire one directly from an AD, you decided to spend double the amount and buy a 20+ K Daytona from eBay and find out a year or two later that it was a fufu. This hurts the idea of what a Rolex is supposed to be, but then again, Rolex brought this on themselves by not creating anything new for the past 50 years using centuries-old technology. The fact that these replicas can make a dial and case and movement, basically everything that makes a watch super close to the point we only have small tells to spot, is beyond ridiculous. There's nothing special protecting Rolex. They mainly focus on selling versus innovating, and it has caught up to them. These original versions are no longer made. In fact, there's talk about how these criminals were raided back in 2019, and now 2 different versions have popped up which uses a similar case to the genuine. They have better parts, except when it comes to the movements. The newer ones use lower quality movements compared to this original one. The original factory that made both the 4130 and the 3130 or the 3135 was a popular factory in China that actually made movement parts for well-known brands. This factory made all the parts for the movements and then assembled it before selling it to the criminals who would then print the logos on the movements. The newer ones are made by different factories. Even though they claim that they're made by the original factory, it's not. And here's why that popular factory is no longer making the movements. Because at the same time when the Daytona was getting very popular, these guys got super bold and decided to make their own Daytona. They gave it a different brand. They even cleaned up the movement, made the movement look way much better than you can get in any rep, and threw a better balance wheel and listed the watch for $2,000. Now there is some talk that Rolex had a hand in stopping both the factory that made the movement and the factory that built the watches. But regardless, they're back again and somebody needs to stop them again. The truth is, dealing with replicas is like playing whack-a-mole. You hit one, two more pop out. I'll tell you what no one is telling you. The fact is, Rolex is fighting an endless battle and all this weightless BS is not what you think it is. They say the movements are well crafted to the point they can only produce a few watches a year. Basically, they're making some high quality stuff that's not easily made. But yet you have this replica selling like masks. Sadly, Rolex movements are nothing special. They've been using the same movements for over 40 years, each time just redecorating. They put a base of tiny white gold on the dial hands, just enough to say that there's gold in a Rolex. They use stainless steel, which is nothing special no matter how you relabel it or claim it's in-house steel. Before we wrap this video up, I'm gonna give you a final example. It's this Rolex 126610LN. This sub was released in 2020 and technically it has a different in-house movement, the 3235, which Rolex says has 90% newer parts than the old 3135 movement. And they also say the movement has 14 different new patents. This 114060 has the 3130 movement, which is the no-date version of the 3135. Basically, they're both the same size and everything. Just one has a date, the other one doesn't. The difference between the two is now they've changed the case size and shape between the lug width and bracelet. The dial and hands are different. Basically, everything has been touched or improved. Even the reserve went up to 70 hours on this new movement. So how come when Rolex released this model in 2020, just a couple of months, China produced the exact same watch with the exact same movement that takes the same genuine parts and also has 72-hour reserve? Rolex Service Center since 2017 has been flooded with foo-foos. The customers never knew anything, they simply wore the watches, and when it was time for servicing, they sent the watch to Rolex only to receive it back stating that it was not a genuine. This was around the same time when Rolex stated that they will no longer authenticate a watch without papers. At the same time, eBay became a scam site for a couple of years. This was the same time the YouTuber was caught selling foo-foos. To this day, it's still going on and they're getting better and better at deceiving. You'll never hear about it or see it coming until it's too late. The danger of these fakes is the ability to be used to scam honest customers wanting to purchase a Rolex outside an AD. Not to mention Rolex customers who can't buy the watch because of the wait list and end up grabbing a replica.
But if I lay down and I play